following is a message at Living Savior Church in Asheville and Hendersonville, North Carolina. To learn more, go to lsavior.org.
Of all the things that you get to notice when you're reading through the Passion history and these 7 words that you've meditated upon tonight, what strikes you the most? Throughout all the Sundays and Wednesdays, by design, we've done our best to make sure that all of the Passion history, Jesus' sufferings and death, is digested. You get all of it. Next year, Mark and John. Next year, Luke. And then year after that, back to Matthew. You know, if you take the Passion history when Jesus is entering into that final Holy Week from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you take that material out of the Gospels and you take the rest over here, it outweighs the rest. There's that much content, that much meat. Every single year you can't help but dig in and find something new. And so what is that for you? You dig into the things that your Savior gives you, especially these words that you've heard tonight and what we're about to see. Jesus is dying on the cross, and what strikes you? Does it not strike you the wickedness of mankind? I mean, it's shocking. How awful mankind could be that they would not only run a monkey court, capture an innocent person, somebody who's supposed to be some type of benevolent dictator washes his hands of the matter, and the most innocent man, the only innocent man of all, is somehow convicted to die in the most excruciating way possible. He's fortunate that he actually made it to the cross, because most people don't survive the scourging and the flogging. I'll save you the details. The wickedness of mankind. Shocking. The world is getting worse. It's always been this way. How about the fact that God can't help but make very clear that he's adding exclamation points left and right. God takes the ground that he had made way back in those first 6 days, the ground that he had used to not only form man and woman, but breathe the breath of life into them. And look at the mess that we've made, humankind, and he takes that ground and he causes it to shake on this fateful day. Something's going on here. Or how about this? That on this day, when the worst death of all was happening, God causes people a little bit later to rise from the grave. So that when it seems like all is lost and everything's ruined and this is the worst devastation and tragedy and travesty ever, God is causing people to come out of their tombs and appear to many, as if to say, look here, look here, look here. You can't dismiss somebody who you knew, you went to their funeral, they were dead, they're alive, show up at your doorstep. What are you going to say? How about this? The fact that during this, in the middle of the day, it's not just a gloomy, rainy day as it was for us here in Western North Carolina. No, God took the sun and blew it out like it was a candle. Caused everything to just go black. How about that? One exclamation point after the other leads us to constantly lean in and say, look at God doing what he does best. Look at God doing something big. And yet that's not it at all. It's not just shocking, the wretchedness of humanity. It's not just awe-inspiring that there's an earthquake and rocks split. It's not even just amazing that God blows the sun out or causes dead people to rise when the worst death of all is happening. Paradox much, by the way? The most shocking thing is not that God works through all of those things. It is that God is working through the ugliest thing of all. You and I'm convinced, if we were standing there, it would be bad enough to hear the sobbing of Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of our Savior, sobbing while they're watching that. I'm convinced. Maybe you could. I don't think you could. I know for certain I couldn't. Watch it. Couldn't see it. And especially not just the human side of it and the physiological side of it, but knowing who he is and then watching it? No way. Couldn't do it. Because you have to lean into something where God is showing the world something that it otherwise could not ever behold. And that is that God, when all seems lost and when everything seems ruined, he is doing his greatest work, greater than shaking the earth and blowing the sun out like it's a candle, greater than making some dead people rise from the grave and splitting rocks in two. God does his greatest work when everything is ugliest and awful and wretched. And that's what makes the cross not just the most popular and famous symbol of our faith, but so valuable to us all. God is doing something. He's working. And he shows you the kind of work that he does. A POW soldier by the name of Dutton. I shared this with you several Easters ago. If you don't remember, that's okay. I barely remember too. He gives this poem about how God works through what seems to be the most obscure and wretched things in order to bring the greatest blessings. And he says something to the effect of, could Mary suppose that somehow in this suffering God held a rose? He's pulling the curtain back from what you and I must see. That God works through the ugly in order to make you beautiful to him. God works through that which is awful in order to bring you out of this awful, awful place called this world to heaven where there's no such thing as awful. God works through death in order to give you life. And doesn't he do that in your life? As he sends you miniature crosses, sickness, weakness, shame, regret, friction, relationship fractures, every struggle that you experience, God does not show you that he's going to make your life better, but rather he paints better than a yellow brick road the pathway that leads to your eternal home so that you would be free from a place that will always disappoint you and leave you dead like the rest, and instead bring you to a place where there is only life. That's what makes this Friday good. And that's exactly what your Savior wants you to have. A life that leads you to always lean into the cross and to see this world for what it is, but most importantly, to see your God for who he is. A God who's not afraid of suffering. In fact, he would create and orchestrate the worst of it all to save you not only through it, but yes, even to save you from it.